welcome everyone, and thank you for joining our webinar today, all around unlocking the full potential of SolarWinds Orion. Really pleased to see some people here. It looks as though the poll's open now, so can people see the poll?
Who says women can multitask?
Okay. Fantastic. So thank you, Helen. So if you want to go through the poll, that'd be great, just to give us an idea of who we have on today. I'd like to do some introductions. So first of all, my name is Glen Kershaw, Sales Director here for Loop One. Been working with Loop One and previously Kenson now for 21 years in March. So really pleased to have some other experienced people alongside with me on the call. So if I could first of all hand over to Greg Forsyth, please.
Hi guys, yes, I'm Greg. I'm the technical account manager for Loop One in the EMEA region. I've come from a technical background with SolarWinds and many other monitoring tools in the industry, and done most of the roles within the industry as well. So from picking up alerting through to managing teams and designing and building platforms. So hopefully I'm here to make sure you're going to get the most out of your services and unlock that full potential with SolarWinds.
Thanks, Greg. And over to Mícheál.
Hi everyone, I'm Mícheál Halpin. I'm a senior solutions architect within SolarWinds EMEA. I've been with SolarWinds for about 10 years. Prior to that, I worked in a number of various roles in IT. So everything from started off on the help desk, sysadmin, did some development stuff. So I'm a jack of all trades on the IT side.
Fantastic. Thanks very much. So we have some results back from the poll first. So primarily network engineers, some monitoring specialists, and a couple of security help desk people on the call. So great to see. So now we've got the poll working. Helen, are you okay to go ahead with poll number 2? Again, just to get an idea of which pillars, which product sets you are really using within SolarWinds.
I am indeed. This time I've fathomed it out. That poll's now open.
Thank you. Okay, so
a couple of minutes on it.
Yeah, leave that a couple of minutes. I'll leave that in the background. So again, if you can go on and answer, and I'll move forward just to give an idea on the people. Again, looking at the participants, a lot of existing clients, which is great to see, but a couple of new names I've not seen before. So a bit of a heads up on Loop One. So I can see this is a slide that was done for the US office, because it says there that it's 12 years an authorized partner in the States, but obviously from an EMEA perspective, over 20 years. So yeah, I've been working with SolarWinds for over 20 years. Over 25 of our engineers are SolarWinds certified, which has a total number of 130 certifications. And again, that number is changing on a daily basis. But over 4,500 engagements that we've done. So we've helped clients over the years get their SolarWinds to a much richer state. And that's since 2009. Over 100 employees now, over 4 continents. Of which 5 geographic locations. So myself based here out of the UK. We also have an Irish entity, a Germany office in Sri Lanka, and obviously headquartered out of Austin in the States. Another key one for Loop One, and the level of engineers that we have is that I have an average years of SolarWinds experience of 7+ for some of the engineers. I'm thinking some of the UK engineers, sort of Daryl and Terry, that have been with us over 20 years as well. So we've got an enriched knowledge base of SolarWinds and the best ways of getting your system to deliver the value that you require. So on that point, I'll just look to see, do we have that poll result?
We do, but I need to make a confession as well, that I didn't set the question correctly, so that they could only select one answer. So you might want to just cloud over that one a little bit.
Okay, so we've got a varied select of clients here working in network systems, application, database, IT security, and service management. There we go. So we have here a typical, or what I would see as a typical environment. Complex, so there's no integration. You've got servers, systems, applications across a plethora of product sets. So what we want to do here with SolarWinds is simplify that. We want to get rid of the tool sprawl. We want to be able to integrate or seamlessly integrate the systems. So what we see on the left-hand side is a typical customer that we would talk to, and on the right-hand side is integrated. We're now taking advantage of the integration that SolarWinds does through the Orion suite of products. So here we go, Helen. Let's get this final poll, or poll number 3, correct. So the reason for this poll here is part of the talk that Greg's going to go through is going to talk around scalability and ensuring that you're maximizing or getting the most out of your system by using some of the scalability tools that we have available to yourself. So again, it's just trying to really discover on the call how many people are aware of that, I guess making use of them. So from that perspective, quite a key question to gauge where Greg can go through with the demo. And whilst you're finishing that one, okay, over to the scalability side. So for those that are aware, the scalability tools or scalability add-ons for SolarWinds primarily focus around the additional polling engine, the additional web server, the enterprise operation console, and high availability. Now there are some remote office pollers and some other elements, but they're the key areas that you will add on to the SolarWinds platform. As you can see here in the blue box, we have the tool sets that create or combine together to become the whole SolarWinds Orion platform. So feature complete, it's something that a tool or a terminology that I use quite a lot to ensure that you're getting the most out of your SolarWinds system. How do you become feature complete? Well, I think you have to be aware of what the features are, what the tool can do, because until you fully understand what the tool can do, how can you then become feature complete? So within this element, what we want to do is reduce the costs by eliminating redundant tools, but also getting the most out of the tools that you have. I think that's a key part. If you have the correct system, you have the correct tools are in place, then to build on and add, it makes things a lot easier. So I think from my perspective, it's key to hand over to Greg to really talk through how we can do that from the Orion platform.
Yes, perfect. So touching on the scalability, so I can see that some of you are not aware of it, and some of you are somewhat aware of it. So scalability, we need to make sure that we're scaling our platform correctly, and that can come in a number of different ways. I mean, for the example of a global distribution, we want to make sure that we're localizing polling, so using additional polling engines across geographical regions. But on top of that, scaling out in terms of capacity, an additional polling engine will take typically around 10,000 elements, give or take, depending on your implementation. And we want to make sure that you're going you're sizing correctly. So as you increase beyond that, you're going to start hitting performance issues and potentially stability issues. So we want to make sure you're scaling up correctly, getting the right amount of additional polling engines in there. As well, on the scalability side, the web services, and the web services is something that we can use as a scalability tool, but we can also use it as good platform design. We can utilize the additional web servers to offload that load from the Orion server, especially if we're running sort of a single polling engine on the Orion server. And that's at near capacity. To get a bit more performance back out of that, we can look at utilizing the additional web server to offload that load from IIS onto a separate server, and that typically works well. In terms of scalability, we'd advise going to use an additional web server when you're reaching around 50 users if you're doing it on a scalability platform. I mean, personally, if I was building a platform, I would always look to utilize an additional web server anyway to offload that load from my Orion server and just to localize that access to the web services. Particularly if you've got if you're running big queries, or if you're troubleshooting a major incident, for example, and you've got lots of concurrent users all accessing that, we don't want to be impacting the performance of the platform just through running big reports through everybody trying to access similar pages, etc. So utilizing those two functions is really key. Now, there is also the scalability for using remote office polling. So if we've got an additional polling engine, we can create remote office polling, which is a much smaller polling engines that we can deploy on smaller sites where we've got maybe just a few servers, a few network devices. Instead of going down the route of putting a full poller to localize the polling there, we can just put these remote office pollers in to get a bit more scalability out of that. They do require an additional polling engine to connect back to. But in terms of your growth, that's a really good way to manage those small sites. If you are adamant on having localized polling on site. Now, the other things that I wanted to touch on here really was alerting and getting the most out of your alerting, because that's where we see a lot of people having issues. And those issues can be a number of things, but they all lead to really major problems with a monitoring platform not really fulfilling the monitoring solution criteria. So alerting can go wrong when you've got too much noise, when you've not got enough noise, when you're, and even when your alerts are coming in, but they're not actually giving that much value back to the business. I mean, things like if you've got alerting, and you're not utilizing dependencies. Dependencies are one of the features within the tool that allow us to understand the service impact, but also reduce that level of noise in the platform. For example, if you've got a router that goes down, and on the other side of that router, from the other side from your polling, you've got 5 servers, 5 switches, etc. If that router goes down and you're not polling locally, you're going to see that all of those devices have gone down because they become unreachable. Now, dependencies allow you to reduce that level of noise by saying, okay, this router has gone down. Here's all the devices or services that are going to be impacted or that are dependent on this router. Because the likelihood is that the router is down, but your LAN is still up, your servers are still up. So it gets rid of that false positive and lets you really focus on where the issue actually is. Things like that can make it look like there's been a power cut and everything is down, where in actual fact, we then spend some time realizing that's not the case. So making sure we're using dependencies is one of the key features in the platform. On the other side of that, custom properties. We don't see, I mean, we see quite a lot of adoption of that, but adding more adoption of custom properties will really help getting alerting in a good place. We see a lot of people that are sending an alert out, okay, this node is down, for example. And that's all well and good, but the chances are these days that you've already got users complaining by the time this alert's come in after its polling cycle. So we need to make sure these alerts are useful to the people that are consuming the alerts. Yes, we want to know this node is down or this node is impacted or whatever that might be. But we also want to know IP address. We also want to know the node function, and the node function could be a custom property that you populate. We want to know location, rack spacing, the use spacing in there, the responsible people, access details. We want to know the last time this node was down, the percentage of availability this has, any recent spikes, any tickets that have been assigned. All of these things we want to be consuming in the alert, so that the person consuming it has actually got some information to run with, rather than having to go and dig for all this. This information is in SolarWinds, or we can put it in SolarWinds to allow it to be extracted when we need it, and that can really help with the speed of resolving incidents, and reducing the MTTR is something that's really key for incident management. The other thing with alerting is we need to make sure that we're alerting on the right things. It's easy to get the reactive stuff done. The reactive side of things, such as this node is down or the service is already impacted, so to speak. But slow is the new down. Things don't go down half as often as they used to, say, 10 years ago. So we need to be monitoring on a more proactive basis. And things like utilizing SAM, the Server and Application Monitor module. We want to make sure that we're utilizing things like monitoring for what a service is doing, not necessarily just the service being available. A service can be available, and even if it hung, we would still see the service available, but we're still going to have user impact, and that makes us blind to it if we're not really focusing on taking the full use of the tool. So yes, we're monitoring things like the services being up and down, but let's look at the further features of SAM. Things like if a service's job is to do processing, i.e. moving files around in a folder structure for ordering process purposes or whatever that might be in your own business. We want to make sure that we're monitoring for that not happening, or for that being delayed. I.e. if the service is meant to move files around in that folder, they're not meant to be there longer than, say, 30 seconds. And if we've got an alert to tell us, okay, it's now taking more than a minute, for files are existing in that folder for longer than a minute, we might be able to catch that before users are seeing real impact. We might have a little bit of slowness, yes, but it might take until the bottleneck's created quite large before the service hangs, at which point we're going to have user impact. We're going to have to return the service. So monitoring for the right things and putting the right context into those alerts. We need to know who's taking that, who's the recipient of that alert. What are they going to know? Are they going to understand what this means from whatever the alert is? Yes, files are existing in a folder for a certain period of time. But do we need to add more context to that? Do we need to we need to provide the understanding of, okay, this means that this application, that users will be getting slowness, etc., etc. So putting that user note against everything in custom properties allows us to populate our alerts with much more meaningful data. So that's something that we really need to focus on. The other side of alerting is we need to be aware that alerting can be hard to configure, to get it right, to get rid of that noise. And there's a good sort of methodology to do that. And that is that alerts should always have an action. There's no ifs, there's no buts. An alert, if it's going to land on my alert page, it has to have an action. Everything else is just an event. And that's fine. The problem that we have is that the majority of people in the industry, we don't consume events properly. We've all got event logs, but no one really watches them. No one really pays attention to them. But if we can learn to consume that better, that might mean making it more visually friendly to consume, then we can allow our alerts to become much more streamlined. Because yes, if we're going to get an event that will come in to say, or an alert that comes in to say, yes, my C drive is at 70%, and in reality, nobody is going to do anything until 90%, then yes, we do want to know it's hit 70. We want to know that that's happened, but we're not going to take any action. So that becomes an event, and then the alert will be generated off the back of that at 90%, where someone is going to go, right, I've got an alert, I need to take action. There is no point in there being things that are going to sit there for a long period of time. You need to be monitoring by exception. If things are going to sit on your alert page for too long, then let's readdress what's going on there, rather than saying, okay, we'll just accept that this is going to sit here. If it's sitting there for longer than a few days, then we probably want to do some due diligence on our alerting or on our active alerts and say, why is this sitting here for so long? Do we need to change thresholds? Do we need to? Does this alert matter to anybody? Is the right person getting that alert? So we need to spend time to fine tune the alerts by looking what we've got in our active alerting. And consuming the events in the right way as well. And one final point on alerting here is that alerting comes in a number of different flavors. We can do whatever we want with that, whether that's logging a ticket, whether that's sending an email, whether that's sending connecting to a cloud service to send a text, whatever that might be. But automation is really key here as well. We want to look at automating as much as we can, because a lot of the time, monitoring is not your sole job. You're not primarily a monitoring engineer. You're a network engineer or a server engineer. So we want to make sure monitoring works for you, and we take away as much of that heartache as we can. Things like with a C drive. If we're going to get an alert and it's going to sit there and no one's going to do anything, but why not? Why don't we run a script against that alert instead of running an email? Let's run a script first that goes in and clears Windows temp, that goes in and clears old user profiles. If we've still got a problem after that, yes, then send us an alert in an email, and we can go and investigate that. But that'll take away the long process of logging onto servers, clearing down C drives. That, in all honesty, is repetitive, and we could probably teach our kids to do that. So the best way to do it is just to get the system to do it itself. And with things like space, which realistically take up around 70% of people's time, we can reduce that by saying, well, we'll automate as much of that sort of task as we can. and then we can free up our engineers to do real work. And that also leads into connecting with your ITSM. Now, out of the box, SolarWinds connects with ServiceNow and it connects with SolarWinds Service Desk. But we really can connect to any tool as long as it's got an API or even just structured emails to allow us to make sure the alerting is going to log tickets. It's going to take away that admin functionality from our technical engineers who want to spend the time fixing the problem, not writing about it. So if we can get that done through integration, through automation, to make sure that the tickets are logged. Every time we update something in SolarWinds, it'll update the ticket. When the ticket is when the incident, the alert is resolved, it'll close the ticket or resolve it and allow us to put a closure code in there. Which really takes away, all the admin side of things to make sure our techies are being utilized the best that they can. And the final thing that we'll touch on here is the Orion dashboards. Now, dashboards are really, really important. And it's not just about what's on the dashboard. It really is around placement of the dashboard. Who's the audience of the dashboard? Who can see it? And more importantly, who shouldn't see it? We don't want dashboards up there that people will see that don't have the understanding of that dashboard, that may create more work. If you've got a dashboard up there for techies, we want that to be more granular. We want every CPU spike to be flagging up so that our techies are going to, or our monitoring team are going to jump on and have a look, is that spike an issue or is it just a spike? But if we've got management seeing that same dashboard, they're going to see that, okay, we've got a problem, what's going on? And that's not necessarily what the dashboard is trying to show. The dashboard is there for a techie to write this dashboard. I need to go and have a look at what's causing this this fluctuation in status. But the management need to see that only when there is an issue that is being identified as an issue or clarified as an issue is going to flag up that red. So we need to make sure who can see it and who can't see dashboards are really important, as well as placement. So, I mean, sometimes we see, yes, we'll make use of this TV wherever it is, but that TV may not be in the right place for people to visualize it. We want to make sure the people that are consuming it are going to have the dashboard in a really at-a-glance sort of positioning that allow us to consume it, even subconsciously consume it, and making sure that the content of it is the right size, the right color. It stands out, because that dashboard should be a way, let's say for a systems dashboard or a network team's dashboard, to be able to glance up and go, okay, I know my network's fine, I can get on with BAU. If there's anything that changes, it'll flag up, it will catch my eye, I will see it, and we'll be able to jump on it. And that allows us to stop having to care about health so much on a BAU terms. We can go in and start working on the platforms and just jump onto remediate any issues as they are flagged. And with dashboards, getting them right is also key. We want to make sure that we're getting the right information on there. We don't want everything on there. That's what views are for. Views and using within the console. They're where we want to see more data. They're where we want to have interactive functions, drop-down lists, drill into, etc. Things like maps for visibility. They're really good to show on the screen, so you get full visibility of a service stack. Whereas you've got your app stacks and your perf stacks that really are better to have as a drill down option within your UI. We want to stay on top of making sure you've got the right level of granularity on those dashboards, but also the right information. There doesn't need to be any information that you don't need. And that's not necessarily understood by the person designing the dashboard. So we need to make sure we get the requirements correct. We want to reach out, make sure, because I mean, if I build a dashboard for a network team, that might be all well and good. It's what I think it needs to be. But if the team actually wants something different on there, then that dashboard's going to become unused or not as useful as it needs to be. So we want to stay on top of that. Once we get those parts correct, the dashboarding and the alerting and the mapping of services, then we'll be in a much better place to understand the service outage and be able to observe what's going on in the whole service. So that brings me to the end of that little part of there. So I'll hand back over to Glenn.
Thanks, Greg. So on the back of what you've just said there, Greg, I think I've got a case study here for a client that I've known for many years, Springer Nature, who really have gone from what I would say was a complex sort of build with multiple tools to the simplified single pane of glass element. So you can see there the solutions that they have. All they had was just a SolarWinds out of the box solution, but now with the NPM, SAM, VMAN, all the modules you can see there, they now have sort of really entire stack monitoring through those modules. So again, just a perfect case there of clients that can take the SolarWinds model to the from the complex to simple. So how can Loop One help? This slide here highlights some of the services that we do. And again, Greg, I'll probably just go back to you in a second on the rapid report card if I can. But that's one of the tools that we put together many years ago and have refined it and sort of fine-tuned it over the years and making use of some of the Orion insights that we get from the system. But Greg, who yourself and the team there look after doing the rapid report cards, are you able just to talk to what a client would get from a rapid report card typically and really what is used for that? And I haven't really focused on it, but it is a free session. It's a free 2-hour session. So anyone on the call who hasn't, contact your account manager to make use of that.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I do these rapid report cards often, and I really do focus on them as a technical piece of work. And I mean, I've come from working with many SolarWinds platforms, so I have quite an insight into how people are using them. And it's not all about just your server's not spec correctly, you've not got these right settings on there. It is all about monitoring maturity. It's talking about how you're using the tool, what you're using, what you're not using, how your dashboards and how your views are working for you, your customizations, everything like that, to make sure you're getting the most value out of what you've already purchased. First and foremost, before we look at where there's room to increase scope, want to make sure that you're getting the value out of the tool. Because a lot of times, like I was saying, we see people that aren't making the full use or aren't feeling the real value, or monitoring is becoming a hindrance. And we want to make sure you get that right. And we'll point out all the things, and I'm fairly critical with this sort of work as well. I will go in and deep dive into finding out any problems, even on the best platforms. I've worked with a few of the guys, and they've had really good platforms, but we still managed to dig in and find really valuable information that can transform how you utilize your tool to give you much more use across the business, and better use internally with your technical teams as well. So the report really is some time, usually with myself or one of my colleagues, to spend some time talking to you, to look around your tool. We'll take some diagnostics as well, and get some data, and we'll utilize those 3 parts of it really to build a report, and then we'll talk through that report with you guys as well. So we'll go through it in great detail as well. We'll go through everything. We'll help make sure you understand, and then it's up to you guys what you do with that. You can take the information and run with it and do what you want with that, or you can liaise with it ourselves and see if we can help you out, getting you into that much more optimized status, just off the back of a free session with a report card.
Fantastic. And in some cases, Greg, it's fair to say that some clients will require a deeper session. So we have a costed health check. So what sort of value add do you get from a health check over the rapid report card?
So the health check is typically a couple of days of solid engagement. So we're talking into 16 hours really of time spent on the platform, really deep diving into the individual aspects, looking at every report, looking at every agent that you have, any issues you've got on every single little aspect, looking at each of your alerts and looking at how they can be how they're not fine-tuned or anything like that, rather than looking at it as a whole. You're also going to get the Secure Orion certification on there to look at your hardening of your platform, to make sure that you're going to get your platform secure, especially after last year's dramas. On top of that, you're getting the maturity assessment. So yes, we're looking at the platform, but we're going to look at your adoption and enablement, your connection with your ITSM and things like that, to make sure that you're not just looking at your platform, but looking at it as a solution as well, because the solution requires process and everything around it, rules of engagement, change control, etc. All need to be considered to turn the platform into a real mature solution.
Fantastic, thank you. So on the back of those, sometimes there'd be the requirements for professional services. So that would be our typical deployment, where we would have the work scoped, and from that we would have a set of deliverables, and it would be a professional services engagement where our engineer would come to site, or remote, and perform the piece of work. Or you also have access to our managed service hours, which is, as it says there, a pre-paid block of hours, which you could then have there to call off as and when you require to assist with the environment, or all the way through to our Lime services, which sort of houses our ITOM Lite and ITOM Plus, which is a proactive managed services arrangement, which again I'll go into further a bit later. So what is Lime? Well, Lime is our Loop 1 maturity model. It was created as a standard reference for organizations to achieve desired business outcomes. It's based on years of experience from the team that have designed and implemented the systems all over the world, through thousands of organizations. The Lime model is structured to help express business technology goals. It provides a methodology to improve monitoring practices across your stack effectively. As you can see there, some of the elements there. I think the next slide there. So you may have seen it, but on our website, we do have the Lime monitoring maturity calculator. So there's 21 questions. It takes about 5 minutes, and you'll get an instant result. And what that will do is it will grade you from ad hoc to insightful, going through the 5 layers of maturity. Ad hoc, as we've mentioned before, is going to be similar with tools, sprawl, and unaware of elements, through to fragmented, typical, optimized, and insightful. And again, that's where, if you engage with Loop 1 on the Lime journey, we will take you from wherever you are to insightful. Again, as you can see, there's many clients here that are aware, but we also do offer the SolarWinds maintenance renewals for you, so the value-add licenses. So you can have the standard renewal through Loop 1, but again, we also have our enhanced package, which does include some much more focused elements for your network to have managed service hours, training seats. But again, many of you may not be aware, but our support model is also a 24/7 support model. So we do have a 24/7 Loop 1 break-fix support. Any issues, any problems, you can contact Loop 1 through our 24/7 knock. Public training, again, as you can see, there's quite a myriad of training courses that we offer. Our flagship courses being the 101, 201, and 301. What this slide doesn't show is we've just actually launched a new subscription model. So you can name five engineers that could then go through that year, and they can subscribe to any one of those courses. So for example, at the start of the year, you could have one delegate join the 101. Towards the end of the year, if there's been some enhancements to the training and some new releases, you can then put them onto another course. So if anyone has any questions or issues, again, reach out to your account manager, and we can talk you through our subscription model, again, for up to 5 named engineers through the course of the year. And you'll be pleased to know this is the final poll. And again, I think we just wanted to get an idea from yourselves of what observability means to you as an organization. I mean, SolarWinds have now launched, I don't want to steal Mícheál's thunder, but SolarWinds have launched the new observability. It's currently in beta launch. Loop 1 are one of only 2 partners in the UK that have the ability to sort of talk, consult, and quote on that. So yeah, if you have a look at the poll.
I think we've bumped into the same issue again with the select all that apply.
And I would just add that I did set it select all that apply, so I'm blaming WebEx. And it's on video. It's recorded.
Again, from that point, yeah, if select what you can. But again, the Q&A is there, so if you have any questions throughout, then please certainly ask, and we'll get through to those when we can at the end, or if there's anything pertinent to the point, we'll make a break and answer the question there. So again, please feel free to use the Q&A, or if any of the polls didn't have the elements you want, again, you can either put something in chat or ask away on the Q&A, which are being monitored. So again, without further ado, I'll hand over to Mícheál.
Perfect, thanks, Glen. And again, just to reiterate, I'm with SolarWinds. I've been with SolarWinds for the past 10 years now on the sales engineering team, currently working as a solutions architect covering EMEA. And what we're about to discuss is definitely one of the biggest changes I've seen within SolarWinds from an offering perspective in the time I've been here. And I've worked through a lot of new releases, things like, you know, when we brought out NPM 12.0 and we had NetPath functionality, when we moved products like vMan and SRM into the Orion console, we created AppSec. This is definitely the biggest change I've seen in that time period. And what we're launching is functionality called Observability. Now, within the IT space, observability is probably a term you've heard before. But what we want to begin with is just to address the difference between monitoring versus observability before we go into how SolarWinds look at things. Essentially, monitoring is the traditional way to keep an eye on what's happening within your IT space. An easy way to think about it, or the way I like to think about it, is monitoring is based on properties of a system. So for example, what's the CPU load, what's the disk utilization, the network throughput, the errors or discards per second that we're seeing across our environment. And monitoring is allowing us to, based on those outputs, set thresholds, create alerts on those, create reports on those. But as IT has scaled in the past, 10, 20 years, the amount of data that's available now, the amount of data that people have to process is beginning to become overwhelming. And with observability, we want to take monitoring as the starting point, but then go beyond that. So what's the difference with monitoring and observability? Well, observability is basically looking at patterns, whereas monitoring is focused more on the properties. So by observing the output of the systems, so looking at some of these monitoring points, can we observe what the internal health of the system is? So can we take a huge amount of data and drill it down to a story to actually say, hey, out of these 5,000 metrics we're monitoring, these are the relevant metrics that indicate the health of our system. And with observability, we want to move just beyond the tactical side of things. Again, what's our CPU load? From a business perspective, the CPU load of a system isn't that important. What is important is the availability and the performance of these systems for our customers, for our end users that are utilizing these. If you, just to cover off some of the points as well around observability, you will see references to log data, to metric scattering, to tracing. Those are all important parts of observability as well. So again, end user experience monitoring, looking at the big picture, the overall health of the system to match with your business KPIs, those are where observability begins to focus in on. So Glen, if I could ask you to...
I just think on that before moving to the next slide, I think on the poll, I think full stack visibility had the highest hit. So again, I think that's quite interesting in this arena. But I think just to add to a point, I think yes, observability is crucial. But what is observability without monitoring? I think you have to have the monitoring element there for that. So I think that's where SolarWinds is so well invested in this space, because they've got the monitoring piece. Now the observability added to that, I think is going to make SolarWinds a front runner for sure.
Exactly. And again, you can even see the point here, it's the foundation for observability. Without monitoring, there is no observability.
Yes.
So Before we actually dive into the product offering itself, how does this work with SolarWinds? So as you've mentioned, Glenn, within the monitoring space, SolarWinds is the industry leader. Whether you're looking at network equipment, whether you're looking at systems, your servers, your virtualization, your storage, the application sitting on top. That framework that we have has allowed us, to move into that industry leader role in the past number of years. And as IT evolves, from back again when I started in IT 20 years ago, if I wanted to build out an Exchange server, it probably took me 2 or 3 months. By the time I spec'd the hardware, ordered it, had it delivered, installed Windows, installed Exchange, configured it, 2-3 month operation. With modern IT, with hybrid, whether I'm using virtualization, Hyper-V, VMware, whether I'm using Azure or AWS to spin out my platforms now, the amount of systems we can spin up and monitor vastly increases the complexity that we have to deal with day to day. As a customer, as an IT professional, as an IT leader, that complexity, it's very powerful, but it does have challenges. And what we see is a lot of customers want to move to simplify their IT operations. So they want to reduce the amount of vendors they have to work with. They want to break down silos between teams. So again, from a business perspective, the business isn't really focused on whether it's a storage issue, whether it's a virtualization or network issue. They're interested in what is the health of the services that our users, our customers consume. So that's why SolarWinds is moving from being a monitoring leader into observability. And a few key points here. If we look at the bottom part here, infrastructure services, security services, common platform, AI, machine learning, United Agent services. With observability, we want to move from being a point product focused company into a platform focused company. So whether your data lives on-prem, whether it lives in the cloud, your monitoring can adjust to move with that as well. Can we start to leverage, functionality like AI ops, like artificial intelligence and machine learning to help us manage those huge sets of data? Can we become more agile, not just from a user perspective? So again, the IT professional logging into dashboards, trying to understand what's happening within the network, but from a customer perspective. So for your purchasing department, for your finance department that has to work through renewals later on. As a SolarWinds SME, if you have to build a business case for more licensing, how do we simplify that from a customer perspective for you as well? So Glenn, if you can move on to the next slide, and this is probably the slide I want to spend the most amount of time on. This is the journey we're going to have from on-prem monitoring into full stack observability. And we'll have terms like hybrid cloud, the OAS platform. So that's observability as a service. First thing to note here, and sometimes it's a little bit tricky for people just to get their head around what we're looking at. But on the very left side, we have your traditional existing Orion platform as it stands at the minute. So your Orion server, maybe with additional polling engines and remote collectors and HA and web servers, that's going to become the basis for what we call observability hybrid. And observability hybrid, or sometimes you'll see reference to being on-prem, but hybrid just means that you can deploy it on-prem, you can deploy it in the cloud as IaaS, and you can use it to monitor stuff that's on-prem or in the cloud. So that's where the hybrid cloud platform is. And then within that platform, you'll have 3 different license tiers: Essentials, Advanced, and Premier. And we'll talk through these in a slide later on, what are the packages within them. But the whole idea is from a licensing perspective, from an initial procurement perspective, you're going to be able to move away from, okay, I need to figure out the interface count for NPM and the port count for user device tracker and how many IP addresses for IPAM and all these various points. And we'll just say, let's simplify licensing. How many nodes do you need to monitor? Doesn't matter if it's a a router or a switch or a server or an API endpoint, just how many nodes do you need to monitor. The platform itself is going to do the data collection. Under the hood, it's going to look like Orion. Especially as we start off, it is going to iterate. You will, when you run the installer later on, you'll say, oh, this is Orion Essentials, this is Orion Advanced. So that data collection, that monitoring point for on-prem is going to look the same as to what you have already. Now moving into the multi-cloud as a service, that's where essentially we're going to have a SaaS platform for monitoring. So the idea is wherever your data that you need to, or your endpoints that you need to monitor are hosted, you can have your observability hosted in the same location. So you might have a hybrid scenario where you have maybe 500 machines on-prem, 500 VMs in the cloud, and you might want to split those together. So the observability as a service, again, is building on some existing functionality that we already have. So if you think of App Optics, for example. You'll also notice at the bottom, we're highlighting seamless migration between these. So as more and more customers are downsizing their existing data centers, we'll offer you the platform, or we'll offer you the migration path to move from your on-prem into observability as a service. Now, it's not going to be mandatory, and this is the big thing to note here. Even though we're launching the observability offerings, there isn't going to be a mandatory, Orion is going to stop working. We're going to make you put everything in the cloud. We want to be flexible, as your environments need to be flexible as well. Every customer environment is different, so we want to have that flexibility to work with our customers. And all of this is going to be based around, again, the observability ethos. Let's look at the monitoring data points, but then simplify how we present that story later on. Let's look at health scores for the various services. And by a service, I don't mean is bits running on my Windows server. When we talk about a service here, we're looking at, is this my customer-facing web service? Is this my CRM application that we wrote internally? Those are the services we're interested in. So Glen, if you can move on to the next slide, please. Now on this slide, the key thing we want to highlight here is between the observability as a service, the hybrid observability, there's something called Cloud Connect. And what Cloud Connect is, it's going to be a mechanism that's going to allow us to link data from your observability hybrid. So that's, again, in old money, it's your Orion platforms with the observability as a service in the cloud. So even though you might be monitoring some infrastructure from the SaaS platform, some from the on-prem platform, the Cloud Connect is going to give you one dashboard that's going to tie the two of those together. So you'll only have to log into one dashboard to view information from both deployment models. It's also going to link in with our AI ops and machine learning functionality. So that's going to be, again, a cloud-based service that can integrate in both with observability as a service, but also on-prem, your hybrid observability. So again, back to getting the data in is the first step in this journey, actually monitoring all that data. But then how do we start to optimize it? How do we start to digest that data and present it in a human digestible format? It's using AI ops functionality. It's actually saying, can we see patterns? Can we see trends in the data that's going to help us identify where the bottlenecks are? Going forward, can we become reactive about things? So not just saying, hey, this issue occurred and we see an anomaly based on existing patterns. Can we start to predict, okay, based on what's happened before and the current trends, we think this could be an issue again? Can we, give recommendations later on? Can we actually say, based on these trends, if you make these changes, this is going to help mitigate future alerts? So that's where we're starting to move towards these. From a timeline perspective, as Glen mentioned, Loop One are one of just 2 partners in all of EMEA that are authorized to discuss observability at the moment. It's in an early adopter phase at the minute, so kind of a soft sell phase, meaning we're not pushing out our marketing too much about it. In Q2, you will see more information about observability. From a timeline perspective, you can actually buy observability now and access the improvements first up in licensing and on the customer journey that we mentioned before. But then later on in the year, you will see the AI ops functionality come online. You will see the OAS functionality come online. So this isn't stuff we're talking about 3 years down the road, 5 years down the road. We have the software already in, as Glen mentioned, in alpha and beta version. So this is something we've been working on as a company, for quite a while now. It's probably one of the reasons why you didn't see as much release from SolarWinds last year with regards to new features, because we've been working on these platforms. Glen,
that's good. I think you answered one of the questions there that came in of how soon can we move. So yeah, the answer is straight away. So yeah, thanks.
Yeah, and I would also point people to go to TWAC. Our TWAC camp was on last week. The very first keynote session was on observability, and the second session after that was on AI ops. So go to TWAC camp, look at the community announcements. Those sessions are on demand, so you can always come back and dive into those. I'm keeping an eye on the clock here. I don't want to get too much into this. There's obviously quite a bit here, but if you're trying to map in your mind the Orion that you have at the minute to observability, what would that look like? Well, we've mentioned observability is switching to node-based licensing. So it's going to simplify the licensing for you. And to begin with, there's going to be 2 offerings, Essentials and Advanced. The way I like to think about it is Essentials is the monitoring only type functionality, and then Advanced is monitoring plus configuration management, plus flow analysis, plus virtualization, monitoring and management. So mapping it to Orion modules, you could think of it like Essentials is NPM and SAM, VNQM, IPAM, UDT, Log Analyzer. So that's in the Essentials package. And then observability includes those plus virtualization manager, plus NTA, plus NCM. So that's the difference between the 2 packages. Anybody familiar with enterprise licensing within SolarWinds, will remember that with our network automation manager, we started that in 1,000 level increments. So starting off with 1,000 network devices. With Essentials, you can start off with 25 and work up. So those are the things when it comes to licensing. Essentials or Advanced, and how many devices you have. And then to scale it out, and this goes back to Greg's previous points on scalability. We have an Enterprise Scale Edition. And the Enterprise Scale Edition is basically all you can eat polars, HA, additional web servers. It includes lab licenses. It includes
that's the key one, isn't it?
Console.
The lab license is a real nice one.
It is. From a licensing perspective, the flexibility this gives is huge. It means that you don't have to keep going back to the well, in 6 months' time saying, hey, we have the device count, but it turns out we're polling more applications than we thought in these servers. We need 2 more pollers, or we need to make a business case for 3 additional web servers for load balancing. It's just included with the licensing. So is it Essentials? Is it Advanced? What's the device count? Do you need the enterprise scale? And that's it. So you can deploy 3 pollers, you can deploy 50. It's very flexible. It also gives you the ability to split your licensing over different instances. So if you want to have one instance in London, a different instance in Singapore, one instance in Dallas, you can do that and use EOC to join them together. Again, the traditional way, we had to license everything up front. We had to know the instance counts. You couldn't migrate, from one license to another, across instances. Now, with observability, you have a lot more flexibility on that side. I'm
Yeah,
conscious we have 3 minutes.
Yeah, going back to what you said earlier, I think for me again, working with SolarWinds for as long as I have, I think this, as you said, is the single biggest change that SolarWinds have ever had, and I think it's really exciting to do. And again, everyone on this call are the first to see this, so again, excited for that. So from that perspective, just as an offer here, I think I showed this to Greg earlier today, and he was like, how do I go around getting one of these? Well, I guess you've got to book yourself onto an observability call, Greg, and yeah, we'll get a knock it out to you. So anyone who's attending the webinar, who books in an observability meeting with your Loop One account manager, will then receive a free monocular. So again, if I see any strange names like Mickey Mouse coming in, Greg, I'll know it's you.
I'll get my way in, don't worry.
But as a thank you as well, again, thank you for taking the time out. We will also be emailing a £20 Just Eat voucher to your email addresses that you subscribed with, just as a thank you for attending again, taking your time out of your busy days. But I know we do have a couple of questions that have come through, Mícheál, so I'll just run through them really quickly. If a client is already an existing customer, so they're happy with that, but they're looking to move to observability, what happens with the existing renewal?
So it's a good question. We'll work through it with within SolarWinds with Loop One on the existing value you have in your renewals would be discounted from the observability license cost. So whatever is outstanding, that'll be discounted from going forward. So you're not losing anything out on that side. Each customer is different. They have different licenses. So there's a little bit of a formula we have to run internally. There isn't just one size fits all for everybody. But yeah, it's
Yeah, and I've worked on a couple of the opportunities where clients had sort of multiple months left on the renewal. So there is a sort of credit system. So any renewal that's there will get credited back and reduced off of the fee for the observability. Another one here was around, I've lost the page now. Again, the flexibility, how flexible is it? I think you touched on there again where there was the 25 node count increasing. As we know with NPM traditionally is 100, 250, quite sort of static bundles, but with the observability, it seems much more flexible. So
it's
very
flexible. You know, it's like I said, it's starting off at 25 and it goes all the way up to, there's basically no limit. The only limit we really have is per instance. From a technical perspective, and obviously with this you can split your licensing across multiple instances. The fact, it's the biggest thing I've seen, especially for MSPs and a number of customers who, you know, I've already worked with a handful of customers where they have deployments in either the UK or in Germany and they want to expand it out and they want to have a global approach to monitoring. The observability offering just makes it so much simpler for them. They don't have to spend weeks trying to inventory the entire network and figure out exactly the latency between every site, exactly where everything is. They know they can deploy and then deploy additional deployments if they need to later on. They have access to the Orion remote collectors, which before you only had access to if you were on NAM or SAM node licensing. It's all just included now, so extremely flexible. And the offering license, you know, it's not just a change in licensing. This is new functionality that's coming down the track as well. There's a lot of stuff that we touch on, like the observability as a service, the Cloud Connect functionality, just even how the dashboards are going to look, the summary dashboards, tying stuff in together. I can't show it today, but I have seen some of the stuff in the works, and it looks amazing.
We've had an hour session, and of which the observability was 13 minutes. So again, this could go on for hours. I think there's questions that I'm not going to get around to. Apologies, but there's just one more question. How does this work if I have multiple Orions? So a customer already has multiple Orions. How will that work with the new model?
It's a good question. So from a licensing perspective, again, we would work with our renewals team to figure out the cost value of that. But essentially, the Orion platforms that are there can stay polling the devices. We would include EOC with that. We'd give you the additional scale for those deployments. So if you did need to deploy additional pollers or additional HA web servers, that functionality is there. So the actual,
so if there's 1,000 node license, for example, they have 1,000 nodes. They could then use 2 or 3 separate Orions, and that would then pull out that 1,000. So they could have 1 Orion for 1,000, or they could have 4 Orions plus the EOC, which then consolidate, bring it all together.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Very flexible.
Okay, well, like I say, we're at 2 minutes past, so I just wanted to say thank you, Greg, for your time. Thank you, Mícheál, for your time. Thank you very much for organising, Helen, and thanks for all our clients for taking the time out. And again, any questions, reach out to your account manager. But there will be a follow-up email, I believe, coming out, Helen.
There will indeed, yeah. It'll have a link to the recording, so you can watch that on demand or share it with colleagues. It'll have your £20 Just Eat voucher in there. And then just a quick reminder, if you could complete the survey when you exit today, that would be great.
Thank you ever so much. Take care, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone. Stay safe.
Thanks all.
You guys.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.